Yes, guys, we are back to talk about the Angle Dynasty League, the greatest dynasty league in existence. Welcome to the Angle Fantasy Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew. We are going to do a full power rank video today. So, my partner and host in today's podcast for Angle, partner over at Angle in the operations of what we do, Mitchell, put together an extremely detailed full power ranking of all 30 teams within our league. So Mitchell, first off, how you doing? And second off, tell us about what your thought process was and criteria for putting this power ranking list together.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on, Andrew. I'm very excited to go over these power rankings. So these power rankings pretty much encompasses a variation of different factors that come into the ranking process. One for sure is definitely the win now talent. Like, are you going to be competitive? And then next, it's like a blend of youth and also contracts as well. So since we are in a salary league, if you do have more team-friendly options in terms of like having rookie contracts that are actually able to produce someone like a Keegan Murray or like a Kay Cunningham or a Paolo Banchero or a Chet Holmgren of sorts will definitely have a boost in value in terms of overall asset accumulation. And then the third factor is for sure is definitely a stash and draft pick. So it really is a mix of like upside and win now talent. And I'm very excited to go over this with you, Andrew. And please let me know if you disagree with any of my placements.
Oh, all right. Well, this will be interesting. Maybe I'll have something to say about where my own team's at. We'll see. We'll see. But first off, before we move on, let's get a good look at the jersey you got on there. What are you sporting today for us?
This is the Filipino national team for FIBA with
Get the full logo in there. Respect for the
oh
Philippines.
shoot, it's a little blurry. Hold on. Actually, whatever. Yeah, it's the full logo, and then we also have like the San Miguel beer repping
There we
my
go.
team here at Angle,
Uh-huh.
the San Miguel beer man. So yeah, this is Jordan
Absolutely.
Clarkson's custom jersey we have here.
Very good. I love it. I love it. Normally, I would be sporting some type of Dodgers propaganda. I've been doing that in the last few videos with you now that they're in the World Series. But I get to wear my jersey to work tomorrow, so that suffices for me. But until then, enjoy all of the Dodgers bobbleheads and Funko Pops that I have in the background there. Those will do the talking there. Go
Go
Dodgers. Okay,
Dodgers.
let's do this. Let's get into it. We're going to start from the bottom up, starting with team number 30, and we will end working our way to the top. If you want to check out where our rankings are, it's on our website, the website that has all of the content that we have, which is anglefantasybasketball.wordpress.com. So let's head there and get into these power ranks. So, Mitch, when you put this list together, you basically had like different tiers, which is contenders, playoff hopefuls, and then tankers, rebuilders. So that's the section we're starting with here. So we're going to start off with number 30, which is the PSV Red Lions. Once again, disclaimer, all these are crazy names. We gave a lot of freedom. You can name your team after any professional basketball team, no matter what country they're in, no matter what gender of team that it's supposed to be, anything. So there's a lot of unique names you probably haven't heard of. But first off, we got the PSV Red Lions. Shout out to Ignaz. He is coming in at number 30. So it's mainly due to some of the lack of draft capital compared to some of these other tanker teams that are down here, which we're going to go into more detail on that. And he has names like Devin Booker, Brandon Podziemski, Brandon Ingram, Jarris Walker. So there is some good names there, but he did take some risks in the initial startup draft. I mean, one thing I will say is dynasty startup drafts is probably the better time to take risks because we're in redraft season right now. And in redraft, obviously, you want to be, pretty much as safe as you can for the first 10 or so rounds, and then maybe take a swing or two towards the end. But dynasty is, of course, involving future outlook and going for players you really believe in. So it makes more sense when you see reaches happen in a dynasty startup draft as opposed to drafts in other types of like game modes. So he went for some guys like Nick, Tristan Vukovic, for example, some guys like that, which is fine, trying to see what their future development is. But there could be potentially could be more upside swings available to him on this roster if he were to trade one of the bigger pieces, like maybe a Devin Booker. That would probably work out pretty well for him. Or if he moved on from Brandon Ingram, Jarris Walker. I know moving on from BI will probably be tough in this salary scenario, so he might as well hold on. But there is definitely still some things that he can do to change things up. And also, too, Ignaz, the owner of the PSV Red Lions, is the only one of us in this league that actually works in professional sports. So he's at the end of the day, he's the real winner here. Take us to our next team, Mitch.
Yeah, so I mean, before I get started, I kind of want to let the audience know this is pretty much like a real life, preview of how, you know, a tanking environment looks like. Some of these teams definitely don't look competitive on paper, but they have a lot of upside swings and a lot of very valuable rookie contracts. So for Magnolia Chicken Templado's Hot Shots, another PBA team, you know, another rival of mine, I guess you can say, has a lot of draft capital from the 2024 draft. So he picked Reed Shepherd, Alex Sarr, and Ron Holland in the beginning, and he also took Nikola Topic, someone that we were really high on earlier into the pre-draft process. Of course, we didn't expect him to tear his ACL. Then he also has some vets like Chris Middleton. Something really interesting about this team is that he has a player in the name of Alonzo Ball, someone that we were really big fans of when he was at on the Lakers and also, growing up in Chino Hills and eventually into UCLA. So Alonzo has looked really good in the preseason, and if I can predict what he is planning to do with Lonzo, he's probably going to try to flip him if Lonzo can stay healthy for, a prolonged period of time. And he's at a pretty reasonable contract around 20 million a year. So he has a lot of upside swings that I do enjoy, very friendly team contracts. And he also has four future first round picks within the next 2 years, including two of his own. So the Hotshots have a very bright future, but I just don't have them above the other two tanking teams just because some of the other two tanking teams do have a little bit more established talent, like Scoot Henderson or Taylor Hendricks. So Andrew, let's go on to our German friend. My wife hates fantasy basketball, Mein Frahas.
Yes, exactly. Shout out to him. So this is his team here, Alba Berlin. And like you said, he has a little bit more of a collection of established youth on this team. He also dipped his hand pretty far into the 2024 draft as well. So he does have one of my favorites in the draft, which is Bub Carrington. He has Zach Edey. He has Cal Filipowski, Mitch, one of your favorites in the draft this year. So he's got some really good targets that we like a lot that came from the 2024 draft. And then, of course, having more of an established guy in Scoot Henderson. I know some might be scoffing at me saying Scoot Henderson is established. He definitely still has some work to do. But he does also have Asar Thompson. Hopefully the blood clot thing is not, a long-term issue and he comes back soon, because obviously we want to see both of the Thompsons in, remaining in the NBA moving forward. They're both very, very exciting prospects. Now, maybe one of the reasons why he's below somebody like you is he only has 2 first-round picks coming up. They're both his own first-round pick, which is the same for both the teams ranked at 29 and 30. All these guys own their own first-round picks, which is, of course, ideal. It would be much worse if any of these 4 teams we're talking about so far, or 3 teams we've talked about so far, didn't have their own first-round pick, because now they have control of their pick. They're clearly tanking. They get a shot at Cooper Flagg. They get a shot at Harper. They get a shot at Ace Bailey. So that's great for them. So Berlin does have a large collection of second-round picks, but only just his first-round pick this year and his first-round pick next year. So he doesn't have a large collection such as the team above him does. But he does have some really good blue-chip talent, which is why we rated him so high, at least rated him above, so high within the division of tankers, that is. And he does have some tradable guys. He could potentially get somebody to take Dylan Brooks, but he does possess like an Isaiah Joe. Maybe Marvin Bagley gets some more run. So maybe somebody who wants John Kodchar for cheap. So he could probably still turn out a few more draft picks for himself moving forward too. All right, so we're going to go on to the next pick, and I'm going to obviously handle this one so that Mitchell, the owner of this team, is not talking about his own team. So as you saw from his jersey earlier, Mitchell is the San Miguel Beermen. So part of what makes this easier too is that I was the one that wrote this excerpt for him on the side because obviously he didn't want to write it for himself. So why Mitch is at the top of the tankers is he has 6 first round picks moving forward. So upcoming in the next draft, in the 2025 draft, including second round picks, he's going to have 8 picks in that next upcoming draft. So not only can he draft a few of these guys, especially owning his own first round pick, he's got a serious shot at one of the Rutgers boys, at Cooper Flagg, one of these guys. He has a serious shot at one of them, as well as either drafting some other great people from this very strong draft class or trading those picks for contributing veterans and basically molding the team to his liking. So he does have established blue chip talent in Jalen Green, Jalen Suggs. He has Amen Thompson. He added in some pieces of the 2024 draft class like Modest Buzelis as well as Cody Williams. And then one thing that must be noted is he has Ben Simmons currently on his team. Next year, Ben Simmons' contract, $40 million, is going to run out, and he's going to be approaching unrestricted free agency. So for Mitchell, that means, like I mentioned earlier, entering the 2025 draft with 8 draft picks and over $7 million in cap space. For a salary league, he could basically make whatever team he wants at that point. So that's why he is at the top of the tankers. So let's move on. Oh, actually, let me first say the cool line that I wrote for him at the bottom here. There's some serious beer brewing in San Miguel right now. Okay, so now let's move on outside of the tankers. Mitchell, let's talk about the Seattle Supersonics coming in at number 26.
Yeah, so the Seattle Supersonics is basically a classic top-heavy team, where you're building around 3 max players. So his first 3 picks were Jamal Murray, Trae Young, and Kevin Durant in a mix of an order. And then he has some like upside swings in like an Isaiah Jackson and a Yusuf Nurkic to kind of round out the bench. He has players like a Peyton Watson, uh, Josh Minot, some upside swings that don't really have reliable roles. And what's really concerning about this team is that they have you know, they don't have a lot of moves to make unless he splits some of these players for more depth. So as you can imagine, if Jamal Murray, Trae Young, or Kevin Durant, if one of them goes down, this team is in serious trouble. But what I do enjoy about this team is that he does have that safety net of owning his own 2025 first round pick. So there is some potential upside with this team, but I think he does need to break up one of those big 3. Moving forward, we'll go into the Bangkok Tigers, where BBM ranks him at 26 and hashtag at 21. So this is a classic run and gun whiz team. We've played with this guy over the last 4 or 5 years now in redraft, and he tends to pick the same players over and over again. He likes those 3-point shooters, guys who are fun to watch. However, in terms of roster construction, I think, well, I mean, I know it needs a lot of work. If your only big man is Mo Bamba and Jalen Smiths, aka Sticks, he's gonna need to, you know, find some way for more diversity in that stat set against, other teams. So, you can only win so much in points, threes, and free throw percentage, and you, it's a losing recipe in my opinion, especially with someone who doesn't have his first round pick. However, in terms of notable assets, I do love Cade Cunningham, Darius Garland, Tyler Hero, and Jordan Poole. Jordan Poole is someone who I believe is going to have a bounce back year, but he does need some big men moving forward.
So let's move upwards on the rank list here. We're going to go to number 24, which is the South Bay Lakers. Shout out to the real South Bay Lakers. I love going to watch their games. So South Bay Lakers, that is owned by Javier. Shout out to Javier. He is the team that landed Anthony Edwards in the startup draft. So he for sure has a top 15 pillar on the team. That's obviously what you want within a dynasty league. So he's got that going for him. He's also got some other good contributors. He's got Dante DiVincenzo, Daniel Gafford. He has CJ McCollum as a pretty reliable veteran for now. He also added Rui Hachimura. The issue is he did send his own first round pick for Rui Hachimura, which a lot of people weren't a fan of when he did it. However, if Rui continues to play the way he opened the season, as well as what was planned for him with a more aggressive role being planned with him from JJ Redick, then there's some, that could actually end up paying off for him. It is a 30-team league, so adding somebody like Rui does take a little bit of ammo to do so. But we'll see how that works out, because he did sacrifice control of his first round pick, and he's obviously outside of the top 20 here. So if he ends up, let's say in the lottery, that lottery pick goes to the Beerman, Mitch, who owns this first round pick of his. But there is some guys on this team that can provide good minutes. There's Keldon Johnson on here too. He's also got Mo Wagner, and he has a little bit of talent on the end of the bench. He's got Tyler Kolek. He also has Terrence Shannon on this team too. Javier, what I would recommend, you have 3 second-round picks, somebody who's not going to help you right now in Terrence Shannon. Maybe just keep Tyler Kolek and sell all the rest of that to fill out the rest of your bench, because you have good contributors and a star in Anthony Edwards. You just need more depth. Darius Baisley, Torrey Craig, Thomas Bryant, Dennis Smith, who's not even on a team, and Cam Reddish aren't going to help you. So instead of having, only 8-ish or so guys, you need to get yourself to be around 10 to 11 deep, and I guarantee you'll see your rating rise within like the BBM or hashtag ranking system.
Right. So I'll go ahead and take on the Toronto Raptors. So another team that doesn't have their own 2025 first round pick is forced into contention. What I do like about this team is his notable assets. However, a lot of it doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of build. So he does have Shaden Sharp and Fernie Simons, Jason Tatum, Kawhi Leonard, Hillel Ware, who we are very high on, and Ben Mathurin. These guys love to run and gun. However, to start the season, he didn't have, the best injury news altogether. Shaden Sharp's missing 6+ weeks. Gigi Jackson, another guy who's going to miss a couple of months into the season, and then Kawhi Leonard, who hasn't even practiced in the preseason and up to this week as well. So a lot of concerns there in terms of injury history. I do think this team does have a lot of potential moving forward, though, just because his whole collection of assets are relatively young. And hot take, I know he is in a cap crunch right now, so he can't really start all of his minors players at the same time. But Dalton Connect, someone who I think can really turn his team around if what we think could be potentially a rookie of the year season. So he does have a lot of potential. He does have a lot of tradable assets, especially if he does move Kawhi with one of those younger pieces like Connect or Ware. He could really turn his season around in terms of contention. He just really needs to get healthy. And to kind of end this point here, as you notice towards the back end of the playoff hopefuls, a lot of these teams are forced into contention and they don't have their own 2025 first round pick. Something to note there.
Right. So that's like what brought me to tell the South Bay Lakers, you don't own your first round pick. So really you don't have any other choice to try to win as much games as possible. So that's why I suggest, moving some picks and a young player who's not going to help you right now to try to boost yourself up, since you don't have any, draft capital for this year moving, or at least controlled draft capital moving into this draft anyways. So, shout out to Slice, the owner of the Toronto Raptors. Shout out to Colby, the owner of Colos Roads, and shout out to Canada, where both of them are from. So we're going to move on to number 22, Colos Roads. So even though in regards to his literal power rank within the systems we used, which is hashtag and basketball monster, Colby's team can easily make the playoffs. It's very, very possible he'll sneak in towards one of the lower seeds and go on a little bit of a playoff run, which for him, it looks like he does not have control of his 2025 first round pick. So obviously that's the goal. The reason why he's at 22 is because, as Mitchell said, this does not just factor in how well you're going to do this year. This is a factor of all of the assets you currently have on your team, what your future outlook looks like. So there's a lot more tied into it, which is why, we're playing Dynasty in the first place. So like right now, when I'm looking at the way his team's organized, he's got all of his best players organized into the top 6 right now. So this looks great going through the top 6. Zach LaVine, Donovan Mitchell, a nice top 20 Dynasty staple to have on there. Again, that's what you want. Cam Thomas, Cam Whitmore, Jakob Poeltl, and Clint Capella. That's great. When you move onto the bench, though, not great. And I think that's what is affecting Colby's ranking here, despite probably being able to make playoffs, being down in the 20s here. AJ Green, Monte Morris, Drew Smith, Chris Murray, Mason Plumlee. Nothing that's too crazy to us. Jamal Shed could be something, and he does have Kristaps Porzingis in his injury reserve as well, too. So obviously that must be noted. But even in the minor system, he's got Hood Schifino, Nick Smith, Kobe Brown too. So I think that's probably more of the reasoning why Mitch put him where he did. But again, this team does still have a very, very fair shot to make playoffs, potentially even get into the second round and make his money back for this year. So he's got good win now players, but there's just no draft capital on the team right now to be able to kind of fix his bench. He does have some young players that people might want though. So Colby's a very experienced manager. I'm very, very confident he's going to be able to make something happen. And, obviously would not at all be shocked if I saw his team in the playoffs.
Next team here, we have the Hobart Chargers. Ben, I love you, man. But I do think you need some guards on your team. You're not going to win winning only four categories and hoping you win the swing category. You're going to be a tough out in the playoffs if you do make it there. However, there are a lot of injury risks with your team. Um, so honestly, overall, I do think this team has the potential to make some noise in the playoffs. They do have a lot of young, promising studs like a Jalen Johnson, Evan Mobley, and a Mark Williams, also in a Rudy Gobert. So, this was also before that Rudy Gobert extension where he declined next year's option to renegotiate his contract to more so on the 30 million mark versus the 40 million. So that does add some flexibility. And in the next update, I'm sure I'm going to bump you up a little bit based off that. You do have a little bit more cap control there because of the Rudy Gobert salary negotiation. However, this is a team that doesn't have its own 2025 first round pick. And I believe would be kind of on the borderline of making the playoffs. But if you do make it, I mean, for as like a 14 to 16 seed, you're a really tough out just because you really lock in those rebounds, blocks, field goal percentage, and turnovers. So, Andrew, is this a team that you would not want to face as a potential top seed yourself?
Um, for me particularly, no, because I'm not really good in any of the categories that he's really good in, anyways. But still, though, I like respect to this team. This team can absolutely take somebody out, take out one of the top seeds if it's a seed that needs like if it's one of these guys up at the top that has rebounds in his build, and somebody like Ben's for sure going to be a problem for him. Okay, so now we're going to move on upwards here. We're going up into now the top 20. Our boy Lambert with the Kazawa Samurais. Okay, the Samurais have a very, very solid starting five, or I guess we could call it six, but starting six. Scotting Barnes, top 10 staple for Dynasty Leagues. Love that. That's what you want. He's got Drew Holiday, OG Anunoby, Naz Reid, one of my favorites. I believe that's his favorite player. Shout out to Naz Reid. He's got Karl Anthony Towns, and he has Andrew Nembhard. Solid starting six. The reason why he's also ranked upwards into the top 20 is because there is some promising guys that are on his bench right now, mainly Jared McCain. He's got Baylor Shireman as well. He does have Cam Christie in his minors, but he does not have any of his draft picks aside from his 2026 first round pick. And I think the reason why both of the ranking systems and BBM and hashtag aren't a fan of him is because he doesn't really have a clear build to his team. And that's potentially going to be an issue for him. Some of the other veterans on his team, at least like with Reggie Jackson, hasn't really got much playing time yet for Philly, despite them having a ton of injuries. So obviously that's not great. Fontecchio didn't have a great first game. He has Gorgas Niang. But even though he has Jared McCain and Baylor Shireman, they're not really doing much for him at this moment in time. So it's really just like a six-man team at this moment in time, which is probably another reason why the ranking systems don't like him. So obviously he has the option to be patient if he wants to, but he doesn't own his first round pick this year. So, maybe a trade or two to get in some veterans to help him out might work out. But the other issue is he doesn't have a ton of cap space right now. So this kind of might be just where he's at, unless he moves one of those bigger contracts, like he gets somebody to take on Drew Holiday's contract or somebody to take on OG Anunoby's contract, and he actually has a lot of flexibility after that. So we'll see if Lambert makes any moves moving forward.
Now we get into the top 20, and you're going to start to see teams who own their own 2025 first round picks. So I kind of push them up a bit in comparison to the others on the bottom tier of the playoff hopefuls, just because they have more future flexibility. So with the Chicago Bulls, they have Luka Doncic, a top three dynasty asset, LeBron James, Herb Jones, Miles Turner, and Karis LeVert to a lesser extent, who does have an increased role, by the way, with Max Strus out with an ankle injury for 6 weeks. So this team is definitely on the top heavy side. similar to the Seattle Supersonics, but I just like Luca and LeBron a little bit more than Trae Young and KD in terms of a dynamic duo. And, you know, that's a really tough team, especially in a 30 team league where, those two players itself can really carry most weeks. So a lot of this team's reliant is on health and availability. So as long as Luca and LeBron James are playing, they're going to be a pretty solid playoff hopeful, in my opinion. So yeah, I do think he is a trade or two away. Maybe he trades Miles Turner for a little like two top 100 players instead of having a top 50 player to add to that depth. So a lot of these teams in the playoff hopefuls are more on the top heavy side compared to the real contenders that I have in the top who we'll be talking about shortly.
All right, so let's move on down to Sacramento. Shout out to Nick. We're going to talk about the Sacramento Monarchs. So, Nick's going to absolutely make playoffs this year. This is the team I think that has the largest disparity between the two ranking systems that we use. Basketball Monsters thinks he's the 20th best team, sorry, and hashtag thinks he is the 10th best team. So I believe this is the one with the highest amount of disparity there. But as Mitchell said in his comment for this team written on the right over here, he truly is a high risk, high reward team. He does obviously have some good stars. He's got John Morant. He has Bam Adebayo. That is a solid two-man core. So instead of one of these top 10 staples, he's got two top 40 guys, which is perfectly good as well, too. This team is deep. He's got PJ Washington, Jonathan Kuminga, Isaiah Stewart, Tyus Jones, love that. And he also has a couple of guys waiting for him in the injury reserve. He's got Sadiq Bey in there, and he's got Jared Vanderbilt in there too. And of course, he's got Punch Bob Portis. So, Bobby Portis and Tyus Jones are definitely Nick team staples. So he's for sure going to make playoffs because not only does he have a good amount of depth right now, but he has both of his first round picks and he has one additional second round pick in his 2025 arsenal as well too. So he can easily move picks if he wants to replace guys like an Isaac Okoro, Marjon Beauchamp, and Doug McDermott, all of which I would, yes, try to get rid of because he does have some great pieces on this team. He just needs a little bit more complementary depth. I think he's still going to make the playoffs anyways. And obviously he's still waiting for guys like Bey and Vanderbilt to get out of the injury reserve as well too. But the team just needs a little bit more figuring out, but Nick's an amazing manager. He's going to be fine. He'll be probably within the top 10 of these power rankings eventually.
Nice. So we're going to go on to the Los Angeles Lakers here. This is Phil. We know Phil. He has really great rookie scouting talent in his reservoir or in his arsenal, in his dynasty arsenal. And he has some really great notable assets. RJ Barrett, a guy that we think is going to have a resurgence here, playing in his home country in Canada. Jalen Brunson, who honestly we love. He took less to play with the Knicks and have Mikal Bridges come over, and they signed OG Anunoby to an extension. So he's taking less for the team, which is great, great, great news for a salary owner that has Jalen Brunson. And also it allows Anthony Davis to, have that flexibility in keeping him down the line. He also has some really interesting young players like a Jaime Jaquez, a Rob Dillingham, and someone who we think is a great sleeper, Oso Ighodaro, and Tristan da Silva. So a lot of flexibility. I know that BBM and hashtag basketball don't rank him the highest, but he does have a lot of tradable assets, which he can easily flip into the top 10 team. So he may not be there right now, but there is definitely that potential. And not only does he have those young players, he does have his own 2025 first, which is pretty valuable, especially because there's a lot of hype around this 2025 draft class. And when they see, these projections on him, they're going to salivate over the fact that, the Lakers could be a potential late lotto team. And if he can leverage that, he can possibly get a top 150 asset contributing for him on top of, RJ Barrett, Jalen Brunson, and Anthony Davis.
Very good. All right, so let's stick with one of our other New York named teams, or one of our other NBA named teams, I should say. We're going to go to talk about the New York Knicks. So this is a duo-owned team, a co-commissioned team by our friends over at Point Made Basketball. Shout out to Josh and Sam. So the New York Knicks have an excellent collection of young talent and win now players. Their timelines aren't really like matching up to each other, but I don't really think that's a big deal at all whatsoever, in my opinion, because they're going to be able to churn out a lot of magic from this team. So even though the Basketball Monster and hashtag ranks are the highest, we have them in the top 16 because they do possess 6 first round picks moving forward, in addition to 4 second round picks. They have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 picks in the upcoming 2025 NBA draft, in addition to control of their own picks. So if they feel like tanking for flag, which might be an option for them, considering one player we're going to talk about in a second here, they absolutely have the ability to do so and have a ton of picks remaining in there to make a lot of magic happen too. They also have some dead cap that they could probably get rid of by making some trades too. So there's a lot of flexibility to be had with this team. Like, for example, they can move off of Batum and Cody Martin in a some type of smaller scale deal and clear up $12 million of space right there. And so there's a lot of things they could do. They can move Al Horford's $10 million. They can move Kyle Anderson's $8.7 million. But they have some big time contributors. They have Joel Embiid. So this is what I talked about. They might potentially have the option to swing this into a tank if Embiid is not healthy like whatsoever this year. Then perhaps they can utilize that to go flag hunting or try to get one of the Rutgers boys in the upcoming draft. But what I like about this team is they do have some young guys that are win now players like Jaden Ivey. They have Quentin Grimes. They also have a nice sleeper stash in Ricky Council. I like him as like a deep league stash. And they have Mikal Bridges too. So there's a lot of possibilities with this team. Oh, and of course they have Yves Missi. I can't believe I skipped over that one. Yeah, that's a great person from this 2024 draft class. So there's a ton of potential within this Knicks team here. I really like what they've got going on. I love all of the first round picks that they have and the dead cap that they're able to create space with as well too.
Great. So next, we have the Houston Comets here at 15. Our good friend Mark from Sports Ethos, who loves to partner with us on our trade reviews. I have him here at 15th with Basketball Monster rank at 12 and hashtag rank at 19. His notable assets are DeJounte Murray, who just fractured his hand. So, sad news on that part. D'Angelo Russell, Kyle Kuzma, Domantas Sabonis, and Ivica Zubac. So a lot of guys that have a lot of potential moving forward, especially with Zubac, who has an increased role with the absence of a Kawhi Leonard and obviously the departure of Paul George. But that hit to DeJounte Murray definitely sucks. This team is very well versed. It knows its strengths and it knows its punts. And also, it does have a potential lotto pick up his sleeve. So I remember in the last trade video when I watched it over with Brax, you, and Mark himself, he really values that pick and believes it could be a potential lotto pick. I believe it's the Colos Roads, who we do have around, I think, 22 or 21. So if he could trade that pick, especially when that team, has a slow start and teams start to look into potential values closer to the draft and closer to the trade deadline, that pick could potentially net him a top 100 asset if all things go wrong for the closest road. So there's a lot of potential here for the Houston Comets to move up. It'll be interesting to see what he does with DeJounte Murray if he just lets him sit with him. But with that all being said, the Houston Comets don't own their own 2025 first round pick, so they're going to be forced to contend with DeJounte Murray or not.
All right, now that's going to take us to the Syracuse Nationals. In my opinion, this is easily probably going to be a team that's going to finish at minimum within the top 12, I think. He's safely going to probably make playoffs, of course, so long as everybody stays healthy. So this is a team that is both deep and has some top end talent. So I would say he for sure runs about 10 players deep. And I think the only reason why Mitchell put him a little bit lower on the power rank is all he has is just one first round pick in 2026. And then in regards to like any stash players, like I said, he's got 10 deep for sure right now. And then the rest of his bench, pretty much all I see that I like is Scottie Pippen. So there's some other guys that could probably find their way to the waiver wire, maybe eventually. But he took some late second round guys from the 2024 draft. But let's talk about the main pieces here. He's got Desmond Bane, Tyrese Maxey as his big two basically, but he also has Devin Vassell. Actually, so he's got a big three actually. He's got Kelly Oubre Jr. He's got Jalen Wilson, Kelly Olynyk. He's got Colin Sexton, Ayo Dosunmu, Kevin Porter, and Norman Powell. So this is for sure going to be a very, very competitive team. Not a ton of like draft capital and basically no cap space remaining. So he's going to have to get creative if he does want to make any type of trades. But right now, he doesn't have to. He's got great positional versatility. He's got lots of guard forwards and guards. But one thing he is lacking is maybe viable options at center. All he has is Kelly Olynyk. He has Jalen Williams too. Jay Will from OKC, but I don't know how. I mean, he's currently hurt. He's going to probably get some playing time now that Hartenstein is hurt, but once Hartenstein's back, Williams is probably not going to be in the rotation whatsoever. So that's pretty much the only thing this team is missing is some backup to Kelly Olynyk, but he at least does have somebody like Scottie Pippen as well developing for him, as well as, of course, like a Jalen Wilson. So very well overall balanced team.
Then we're going to head over to the Providence Steamrollers here at 13. So this team has a really nice collection of young talent with LaMelo Ball, who has looked great in his debut against the Rockets, Emmanuel Quickley, who unfortunately just got injured, Nick Claxton, Trace Jackson Davis, and Tobias Harris. Top 50 Tobias Harris at the Detroit Pistons is what I'm predicting. So a lot of great potential here. And also worth noting, 5 first-round picks along with all these players. So Basketball Monster has the Providence Steamrollers at 8 and hashtag has them at 17. So, the projected strengths and punts, he's a more of a balanced team with not a real identity yet. When I spoke with him for a potential trade negotiation, he did say that he was tanking. Uh, and I could see why his main core is definitely on the younger side. But if he decides to contend, this guy's a real threat. Especially with how his team is constructed. He does have $5 million in cap space, but 18 million is Harrison Barnes, which he can for sure cut uh, if he wants to, or make use of that and pair it with one of those rookies rookie deal guys, like a Trace Jackson Davis for a real upgrade around the 20 million mark. So very bright future ahead. I would have him higher if he was a little bit more committed in the depth, but because he sacrificed that depth for those first round picks, he's more on like the tail end of like the top 15. So, uh, bright future ahead for sure for the Providence Steamrollers.
All right, let's move up here to the Dallas Mavericks. So the Mavericks here have a very, very solid collection of young blue chip talent, in addition to a very solid big three of veteran producers. So let's start off with the young blue chip talent. He's got Chet Holmgren, again, top 10 staple. Love that. Love if one of your teams got, love if your team has one of those types of guys. He's also got very, very high contributors like a Damian Lillard. He's got a Miles Bridges, and he's got a Brook Lopez too. But to round out the depth of youth that he has, he's got Anthony Black, Denny Avdia, and Kason Wallace too. So very, very solid overall team. He's pretty deep. He's probably about 11 deep, I would say. There's pretty much only like one guy or so on his bench that's not great. He does have Wendell Carter Jr. as well too. Damn. So yeah, he's for sure pretty much 11 deep. Yeah, pretty much like Blake Wesley doesn't really play because he's got Kai Jones. He's been playing at least for now. So yeah, this is a very solid overall team. He's got his first and second round pick in 2026. So he does have one more second round pick to play with if he wants to make some other type of trade. But right now he doesn't really have any cap space. So he'll have to get creative if he does want to make something like that happen. But this is a solid team. And maybe he can also get somebody like one of the competitor teams that's tight on cap space to buy Kai Jones off of him, who's got the two-way contract value right now. Something like that is for sure possible for him. But I like the way that this team is built. I like the high-end talent that he has in guys like Dame and Chet. And he's going to really be a block threat with both Chet and Brook Lopez. So he's got a very clear build in mind. And this is definitely a threat for, making playoffs and making a little noise there too.
Surprised you didn't say anything about Denny Avdia there.
Well, obviously, Denny's one of my favorites. I don't have to say much about him, but, great talent, somebody who I think is going to improve on Portland. If Scoot doesn't hit, then at some point within the next year or two, everyone's going to say Avdia is the best player on Portland because he is for sure going to be better than Jeremy Grant.
On a great contract too, by the way.
One of the best in the league, yes.
So just rounding outside of the top 10, we have the Las Vegas Aces here at 11. This is our good friend Case, who we've been playing Dynasty Basketball with for the last 3 to 4 years now. He has a really nice collection of young talent building around Alperen Şengün and really leveraging Şengün's final cheap season, who actually, by the way, is still on a pretty relatively cost-friendly contract for his extension after this year. So he's only going to be making around like that 35, 37 million a year annually for the next 5 years. So the Las Vegas Aces does have a bright future ahead of them just because their star player took a team-friendly deal moving forward. With that being said, who does not have a team-friendly deal is Jaylen Brown, but he did take Jaylen Brown just near the top 100 in our startup draft. So great value there, by the way, for a guy who's a top 50 staple. He does have Marcus Smart, Tari Eason, Jarrett Allen, who has a nice contract at 20 million a year, Mitchell Robinson, and someone who I did not include was Santi Aldama, one of my favorites in dynasty leagues that I think is a great buy low and is also the best player on the Spanish national team. So, Las Vegas Aces has a nice collection of talent. They also have a first round pick up their sleeves. I know we mentioned with Case that in our trade discussion podcast earlier when we brought him on that he was holding that pick for a potential upgrade near the trade deadline. He's going to leverage that. Very smart thing to do, especially since he's so close to being a top 10 and making into that contender tier for me.
All right, so now we're going to begin the top 10. First off, Maka, the owner of the Geelong Supercats, I apologize that your logo is not showing up right now. It was showing up initially when we first posted it a few weeks ago. This list has been out for a little bit, but for some reason today your logo is not cooperating with us. So apologies for that. But for those of you out there, Google the Geelong Supercats right now and check out what their logo looks like. It's pretty cool. Okay, so for Maka's team, Geelong, he has got a solid overall build. He did a great job in his startup draft. So he has a top 10 staple in Tyrese Halliburton. He's also got some good contributors. He has Kyrie Irving. Love that. He's got DeAndre Ayton right now, too. He's got Grayson Allen. And then some nice guys that are contributing on the end of the bench, like Corey Kispert. He has Duop Reith. He's also got Kyle Lowry, too, DeAnthony Melton. So this is a nicely built overall team. And there's some collection of young talent in his minor spots as well. He's got Johnny Davis, Jet Howard, and Dylan Jones. I know the jury's still out on Johnny and Jet, but there's some good hope actually for Dylan Jones, and he does retain control of both of his first round picks as well too. So that's a kind of a reason, like what Mitch mentioned to earlier, why some of these guys are a little bit above some of the other playoff hopefuls is that they have retention of all of their first round picks, and some of them have cap space to play with too. So we obviously have to factor in that these guys are very capable of making some moves and raising their ranking up even more, which is why they're ranked above some of the playoff hopefuls below them that do not have either control of future picks to trade with, good minors to trade with, or cap space to make anything work.
Right. So just rounding out for our playoff hopefuls tiers is the Valise Starfield. So Valise Starfield, our good friend Adrian, another dynasty guy that we've been playing with over the last 3 to 4 years now. He has some great notable assets with Nikola Vucevic, Keontae George, Paolo Banchero, who is his franchise cornerstone, who looked great, by the way, in his debut yesterday, Jaden McDaniels, and Jabari Smith Jr. So what I really enjoy about Valise is that not only is he pretty much on the average of like just outside the top 10 between Basketball Monster and Hashtag, he does have 5 first round picks that he does control. So not only does he have very desirable assets that are very tradable, like a Keontae George or a Jabari Smith for an upgrade, he does have 5 picks of ammo to work with. One, by the way, is the Toronto Raptors, who, I've been trying to bug Adrian for the last couple months to, snag that pick from him, but he's so adamant on not selling it to me, which is probably a good choice because he can probably get a better upgrade than what I'm offering him at the moment with the Cody Williams. So good on you for not falling for that, Adrian. I do think I do think your team does have a lot of potential to win now. I mean, some of the guys I didn't even mention is like Josh Hart, KCP, and Kevin Herter, who, by the way, is probably going to be starting for the Sacramento Kings now that we've heard some news around, the social media outlets. So this guy is deep. not only is he deep, but he has young talent and 5 first-round picks. So much potential that in this next update, I can definitely put you in that contenders tier if you trade one of those picks for a little bit more win now talent.
Yes, that's the main theme of this video is all of you trade your picks, do more trades that we can look at and talk about. So the one guy who's following that instruction and doing trades all the time, shout out to NZ Bulls, the owner of
Good
the
transition.
Brisbane Bullets. Yeah. So the Brisbane Bullets has been featured twice so far within our trade videos where one of the most high profile trades that happens within the next time before we do a trade review video, their trade and as well as their team logo, the main players involved are featured as the thumbnail for that video. So Brisbane's in both of those so far. So with his trades, he built a clear identity of what he's trying to go for with clear punts. So he's obviously trying to go for a volume build, points, rebounds, assists, steals, and rounding that out is guys like Giannis Antetokounmpo, Zion Williamson, and Josh Giddey. But he also has good threes in his build, sporting, guys like Buddy Hield. He's got Bogdan Bogdanovic, and he's got Jordan Hawkins too. So he's going for these volume 3-point guys to also round out another category for himself too. So so far, we can see this guy's a serious threat with basically 5 categories right here. I think he also could easily have some swing days in both free throw percentage and field goal percentage. He can win those every once in a while. The only category he's really going to be bad in is turnovers. That's pretty much it. But that's the difference here of moving from playoff hopefuls to contenders, which Brisbane's the first of the contenders section we're talking about right now, is a lot of these teams are really not going to have that many weaknesses, in addition to still having the ability to move young talent as well as other assets that they can move with. So now Brisbane does not have any more first round picks remaining, so he's a little bit capped there, but he has $2 million worth of cap space to work with. He's got guys like Vince Williams, Nikola Duricic, Julian Strother that he can move if he wants to. So there's for sure still things that Brisbane can do. And obviously, as we know from our trade review videos, he's very active. He's also even got Terrence Mann and Patrick Williams too. So this team's deep from top to bottom, and there's still lots of flexibility with what he can do. So this is a very, very good start here to our playoff contenders that we have in the league. Brisbane Bullets is for sure one of them.
Next at number 7, we have our own Angle analyst,
Yes.
Braxton, with
Yes.
the New Zealand Breakers. So that does mean Andrew is above Braxton in these power rankings. We'll get to Andrew's team in a moment. So Braxton has De'Aaron Fox, Austin Reeves, Draymond Green, Brandon Miller, and Isaiah Hartenstein. Some players that I didn't mention as notable assets that are also going to be contributors, by the way, are Chris Paul, who's poised to have a great year with Wemby feeding him lobs every single game. He does have Grant Williams, who should be a decent rotational piece that provides out of position assists that are very valuable. He also has like Jose Alvarado, uh, Caleb Martin, and Royce O'Neal. Um, the Hartenstein injury does blow to end the season or to start the season, but this is a dynasty league. So although he does have Isaiah Hartenstein should be back in about 6 weeks and hopefully, carries his health over to the playoffs where this team is going to be a real threat, just based on the punts and strengths alone. So this team not only has great watchability because of these volume guys, but there are these pretty strong punts that he has in store and 8 second-round picks that he can throw to people who are salivating for more draft capital. So a lot of flexibility here, despite only have one first-round pick in 2026.
All right. So let's move on to one of our other Australian friends in this league. Joy, the owner of the Singapore Slingers, is coming in at number 6 here. So Joy's got some staples on this team that you usually find on some of his other teams, such as Jalen Williams. And he also has Dyson Daniels on this squad as well, too. So I'm sure he's thrilled to have both of them. He has a pretty clear identity on this team, too, of what he wants to go for and what he's trying to do. Like, so for example, athletic, steal first, point guards, guys that can kind of put around stats in all categories. He's got Dyson Daniels. He's got Chris Dunn. He also has a Keon Ellis, too, who really fits what he's trying to go for. In addition to Jalen Williams, J-Dub, this fits what he's trying to do. He also, for some reason in this in this startup draft, well, not for some reason, mostly because of age and contract value, Jimmy Butler went untouched for a really long time, and eventually got to the point where Joy said, "Fuck it, I'll take Jimmy Butler." So that's one of his that's one of his stars that he has to build around this team. In addition to great, what we can really focus on here is the stocks, the defensive support. So, like I mentioned, Daniels, Keon Ellis, he does also have Jonathan Isaac. He's got Onyeka Okongwu. He's got John Collins as well too. So this, to me, is clearly a punt points team, but that's totally okay. He's got a lot of well-rounded guys in other areas. I think the only thing he might need is probably some more assists, and he'll be right there. Other than that, he's very solid, well built all around for sure. A team that has me worried if I went up against him, because I don't think I could beat him in steals, and that's one of my categories.
Then we have the Mexico City Capitanes. Uh, at number 5. So Basketball Monster loves him, projecting him at third, hashtag a little bit different at 11. But because of that accumulation of talent with Derek White, Larry Markkinen, Julius Randle, Jaren Jackson, Walker Kessler, and Malik Monk, we have potentially one, two, three, around 5 to 6 guys who can break the top 50 in a redraft setting. And this is a 30-team league, not a 12, standard 12-team league. So that is completely stacked. A team that is great on those defensive numbers and stocks. He also has the volume of points thanks to Larry Markkinen and Julius Randle and a Malik Monk. So this team is very interesting in terms of volume plus defense. So this would be a very tough team. One thing that does concern me is the health of Laurie and Jaren Jackson moving forward. These guys aren't very reliable in terms of playing in March and April when fantasy playoffs occurs. But if that all transitions, he would be a great bet to have in our first playoffs. Something that I didn't mention in this document is that he does have Trey Mann, so someone who's emerging as a potential six man of the year candidate who looked really great in this debut. And also he has Andre Drummond, a guy who's like a great safety net to play with Embiid, who's no longer going to play back-to-backs moving forward. And also Yershon Yubusele, a guy who really earned a contract based off his performance in the Olympics. So a lot of depth there, but also a lot of top 50 potential talent as well. So very dangerous guy heading into the playoffs for sure.
That brings us up to number 4. We're heading to Portugal for this one. Sport Lisboa e Benfica. Shout out to Bruno. So this is like if you want to know how to build a deep win by committee team, you don't have a top 10 talent, but you want to be win by committee. This is one of the absolute best examples of that. In addition to that, we got to give our props to Bruno because I think he picked either 29th or 30th. It was one of those two. And our boy put together an absolute squad still, despite being one of the last picks in our startup draft. So let's go over the top end talent that he has. He's got Franz Wagner. He's got Jalen Duren. He's got Paul George on this team as well, too. He's got Michael Porter Jr., and he's got DeMar DeRozan, and he's got Jeremy Grant. Solid win now, productive veterans. But now let's moving into the bench. Gary Trent is on this team. He also has DeLon Wright on this team. Jackson Hayes, who I think is in line for a pretty new type of role this year. From what I recognize in the Lakers' first game, it kind of seems like JJ is trying to copy what the Mavericks do with Lively and Gafford. He's trying to copy it on a smaller scale with Jackson Hayes, basically, whenever he plays. But the real kicker about this team is when you move down into the minor slots, he has both Kobe Buffkin and Devin Carter. He has a ton of flexibility to play with if he wants to make additional trades, or he's so good already that if he just wants to wait on Kobe Buffkin and Devin Carter to get healthy, he absolutely has that option as well too. So very good collection of win by committee type of talent. There's not like a very bona fide star in his team. All of his guys kind of contribute in a very similar way in regards to his like star level players and his bench level players. So great job, Bruno. Despite picking at the end of the draft, you put a solid team together.
Now we'll get into number 3. We're going to travel all the way to China for the Beijing Ducks. So this is one of my favorite teams, honestly, just because of not only does he have a top 5 talent in a Nikola Jokic, but he does have veterans and a Bradley Beal, but also exciting young players like a Trey Murphy, Kobe White, Donovan Clingan, Stephon Castle, and Zachary Risache. Other guys that I didn't mention are Tamani Kamara, who is a surprise sleeper, who is actually starting uh, for the Portland Trailblazers due to his length. So another surprise contributor there. Alex Caruso, another guy who's a potential top 75 redraft player. And Luke Cornett, another guy who's definitely under the radar. So, yes, this team doesn't have its own 2025 first round pick, but because of those, exciting rookies like Donovan Clingan, Stephon Castle, and Reese Shea, this team is very scary heading into playoffs because that's really the time when these rookie type players post All-Star break start to break out and get comfortable and really assimilate into the NBA. So this team could have a really late push. And also, when looking at projected strengths and punts, this team has really no weaknesses at all. It's one of the most well-rounded teams, and for that reason, he could potentially be the number one team, uh, standings wise when it's all said and done coming into playoffs. However, because he doesn't have those set punts compared to the other teams in the contenders list, he could be prone to an upset. So a lot of potential there, but because of how the build is currently established, he could lose to the right team in terms of a team that has a predetermined build. So, um, Beijing Ducks here at number three. We'll go ahead and go into number two. Of course, Andrew would hype himself up, which is why I'm taking over and discussing his own team. We're
Tell
going
them
to
about it
Spain
though.
here. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, this is also no bias. Andrew and I were like best friends since like college. The numbers back up Andrew here at number two. So I want to take all bias aside. Like I don't want anyone to think about that and just look at the notable assets itself. He does have SGA for sure, top three talent, especially in redraft and dynasty. So that's what sets him apart first from like someone like Sports Lisboa, Benfica. But he also has James Harden. So Harden is poised to have a really great year. SGA and Harden, free throw merchants. Harden went to the line 9 times in his debut yesterday. He's looking great. He's looking like a triple double threat on a game-to-game basis. And we don't know when Kawhi Leonard is ever going to be back at this point. There's still no timetable for return. Bilal is very exciting. Another guy who's cheap for 3 years. Cam Johnson, Derek Lively, who is a promising center, and also Terry Rozier. So Andrew has an exciting roster that really knows his strengths and weaknesses. And I think this is like one of the best duos, really, with SGA and James Harden in the league. So he has two top 12 producers in a redraft setting, first round picks in most redraft leagues. So gonna be a real tough guy to take out with a BBM rank of 4 and a hashtag rank of 2. And then we get into Blackwater, who Andrew will take over, who does also have two potential first round candidates in a redraft setting.
Yeah, Blackwater, you dirty bastard. You're the only one that also has two top 12 guys like me. Shout out to Worth, the owner of Blackwater Bossing. So he has to come in at number one. And he also had the added luxury of being the number one pick in our startup draft, which means he won the duck race. That's basically what that means. He had the fastest duck. So props to him. So with obviously the number one pick in the startup draft, he took Victor Wembanyama. He also has what I wanted to do with my team. He is 12 men deep. So we can't really leave anybody out here. We got to name all of them. Steph Curry, which is his other top 12 talent. Fred VanVleet, Malik Beasley, Grady Dick, Nick Richards, Daniel Tice, Mike Conley, Cameron Payne. That one's a little debatable, but at least beginning of this season, he's going to be fine. So I still consider him 12 deep. Gabe Vincent, Keegan Murray, Jeremy Sohan, and then, of course, Victor's at the end of the roster here. So 100% 12 men deep. Lots of young, flexible contracts right now. Cost control with guys like Grady Dick, Jeremy Sohan, and Keegan Murray. So you love to see that. Mike Conley is definitely very good producer for the amount of money that he's on currently. Nick Richards and Daniel Tice are solid backup centers to complement Wemby too. I guess the only thing he's missing is another dominant block source to go with Wemby, but in a 30-team setting, the overpoweredness of his blocks is even more magnified in a 30-team setting, because obviously all these other teams don't have a large collection of blocks like you're able to accumulate in, let's say, a 12-team redraft setting. So that's what really puts him apart at number one here. It's very, very hard to beat a Victor Wembanyama team in a 30-team setting. Just the impact that he has is so much more magnified. In addition to the fact that he's obviously got one of the best players of all time in Steph Curry, and then Fred VanVleet is very complementary to what he wants to do too. So very, very solid, well-rounded team. Absolutely, you know, what I consider to be the biggest threat. Like, if I want my team to go far, I know I'm going to have to get past Blackwater at some point. So I hope someone can upset him for me, but I don't know how likely that's going to be. This team is rock solid. So this is a very, very well-rounded team, and this is just a very, very well-rounded league. If you wanted to see what a solid, well-running, functioning 30-team league, dynasty league, looks like, then today's video is a great example for you. We have a very good league here, and of course we give a lot of attention to our league too. So Mitchell, thank you again for putting this power list together. This is an amazing thing that you did. I was happy to help in any way that I could with this. Of course, happy to do this video with you as well too, talking about this. And of course, we'll see some changes and have an update throughout the season. But maybe, I don't know, do you have a hot take right now? Do you have someone you maybe think is a surprise or your favorite to get into the top 5 from outside the top 5 in the next update?
Yeah, so for me, you know, Adrian. Adrian loves to play with fire at the trade deadline, and he has all the ammo that he can ever ask for. So, you know, within the next 2 to 3 months, I can definitely see Adrian moving from, you know, number 9 to the top 5. It'll be interesting moving forward to see how the league develops. I know we are a very active league. We're going to have a lot of trades within the next couple of months, a lot of overreactions based off the first month of the NBA season. So, you know, you never know. But with that being said, I hope that this power ranking video, you know, not only to our league members, but to those outside the league, get a general understanding of what a tanking team looks like and what a competitive team looks like as well in a 30-team salary league. So with that being said, Andrew, I hope, you know, I wish you the best of luck as a tanker myself, and it'll be an interesting run to look out from the outside and see who takes the first inaugural title.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's always fun because obviously you and I are super competitive when we're running two competitive teams. But if we're in a league where one of us is tanking and the other one isn't, it always is a fun change up to the relationship to be like, yeah, go you. so
Yeah.
so it makes it fun for sure. So that will do it for us today. We've gone through all 30 teams. We will come back to you at some point in the season here with obviously an update on some of the trade activity, because we love doing those trade videos. And of course, we will do an update to these power rankings at some point this season too. So thank you for tuning in with us today. Again, this ranking, as well as all the other content we do, is available on our website, anglefantasybasketball.wordpress.com. Follow us on Twitter at anglefantasybb. Like this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and we'll see you guys next time.
Captain, always gotta look for him. Beat so tight, I almost put a hook on it. Verse so fire, I almost put a cook on it. Had this shit jumping, looking like I put a foot on it. Got 100 on the dash when I book Sonic. Only game that I play, got a rook on it. Got to flow so hard that it looks solid. Y'all be cynical.